Welcome to the week ahead. I'm Hafiz Marzuki, as usual, broadcasting from the AWANI studio, and my colleague Ibrahim Sani is at home broadcasting from home. Ibrahim, how has the week been for you?
The week has been rather hectic. As you know, a lot of the announcements came about, not just from the corporate announcements, but two big announcements regarding the 1MDB settlement. The M-Bank $2.83 billion settlement, sorry, 2.83 billion ringgit settlement when it comes to their involvement with 1MDB. Also, the story of regarding the story of Deloitte. PLT.
Yes.
Yeah, Deloitte was
324
has finally
million.
Exactly, or 80 million US dollars. So those are the two big ones that we didn't see it coming at all, and this is a big problem, right? Because if something as substantial as 1MDB has to be resolved, my idea here is that it should be made public when it comes to what was agreed upon, the terms of discussion between the parties, because it involves your money, it involves my money, it involves 7% of the Malaysian total taxpayers' money. And that's why I find it quite amusing that these kind of settlements were reached without the public knowing how it was made. Itu je lah my 2 cents worth of conversation when it comes to the settlements between Deloitte and M-Bank.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Those two were the big news this previous week. Of course, the announcement was made by the Finance Minister, Tengku Datuk Seri Zafrul Tengku Aziz. And of course, other than that, Ibrahim, you're talking about corporate, of course, mentioning 1MDB, we can't run away from the fact that it's all tied to politics. And this past week, it has been quite, I would say, quite a political scene in Malaysia, despite us being in the emergency said to reduce politicking. It seems that the politicians are still very active. Of course, what you've seen over the past few days is statements after statements made by political parties, whether it's UMNO-Bersatu or even MCA and MIC, stating what is the latest in the situation. And if any of you have missed the brouhaha that brewed over the past week, let me try to recap for you if possible. So basically, we all know that it was reported that Datuk Seri Ahmad Zahid Hamidi, the president of UMNO, have sent a letter stating that UMNO does not wish to work together with Bersatu in GE15. That means the cooperation still stands for now. Heading into GE15 is just during GE15 and post GE15, they do not want to work together. And Bersatu, in a Supreme Council meeting, they have decided that they will focus on their partners in Perikatan Nasional. And another interesting thing, Ibrahim, is that also the statement made by Berita Nasional, which of course issued traditionally issued by UMNO, is saying that they are asking for the Parliament to sit, and this statement was dispelled by both presidents of MIC and MCA subsequently. What do you make of all this, Ibrahim?
I think that's very strange, right? Because okay, if I'll do a pop quiz, do you know who the constituents of BN are right now?
Wow, that's a quite that's
Okay,
quite
here's
a
a
tough
tougher
question
one.
to ask to answer.
There's a tougher one. The tougher one is who is inside Perikatan Nasional?
Okay, if you talk about in terms of let's say
Party.
in terms of officially who stands in Perikatan Nasional is definitely Bersatu, PPBM, headed by Prime Minister and also President Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin. We also have the new boy, the new kid on the block, I would say Gerakan. And also, we also have PAS, one of their major allies. And mind you, PAS is also in cahoots with UMNO in Muafakat Nasional in a separate coalition. Yeah. And of course, you have the Sabah parties, SAPP and STAR.
Right.
And these
so
are
you got
the permutations. These are all the players in Perikatan Nasional.
Okay, so you got the tougher question right and the lesser tougher question, I guess, wrong, because Barisan Nasional's membership is actually quite fluid as well.
Yes.
This is the point, right? The moral of the story is, it seems like all the alliances within the Malaysian political system seems to be extremely fluid right now.
Yes.
And so much so to a point where even when we have the ruling coalition's fluidity of the government coalition there, extremely volatile, the Pakatan Harapan setup is also problematic as well. So much so that Amanah lawmakers left their party to join a sister organization, in this sense PKR, and we've seen how DAP left, some of their lawmakers have left to become independent but still aligned to Pakatan, meaning that they just simply disagree with DAP per se, but they don't want to fall in line with Perikatan. So the topic here is, if we are to look at the week ahead and also elongate this to the year ahead, if an election is done, my suspicion is it's going to go with multi-cornered side fights in a particular constituency, and then the person wins that election, and then after such a coalition is going to be built. And because of this, inevitability setup that's going to be done, where you run for the election, and then hopefully after the election, if you do win, you set up a coalition with some of your fellow winning members, and you form a government. I think this is more in line with how more mature democracies are doing it. And if that is the case, I don't think that's pretty bad for the country.
But that's the thing, right, Ibrahim? When we look at it, of course, you and I, we are keeping a close eye. Day after day, week after week, we're keeping a close eye. But for a normal constituent who does not follow the political scene every day or every week, how do they make a decision? Because it seems to be that, I mean, looking at it from a very macro point of view, it's like, I don't know who is with who anymore.
No, they don't have to make a decision. All they do is just get on with their lives, buy and sell everything, go to work, come back, and then when the election comes, just pangkah the box lah. That's the idea. I mean, if we, eyeball the political ongoings of the country every minute of the day, I think we're going to go bonkers, bro. Last week, this coming week, I did a pre-record with James Hay of Pangolin Investment Management. He runs two funds, Pangolin Asia Fund as well as the Pangolin Aviation Recovery Fund. His fund is actually doing quite okay. They're up 20% month on month. And among the many questions that I asked him, the things that worry him would be vaccinations, the opening up or closing up of the borders between countries, Indonesia situation becoming worse for the COVID-19. All that really bothers him. But when I ask him about Myanmar or Thailand political system, or even Malaysian political system, which is in a way not as brutal or as violent as one in Myanmar, or not as volatile as the one in Thailand, but still one that continues to captivate headlines in Malaysia. He says that what is the problem? Malaysia is under emergency. We shouldn't have been under emergency, but we are under emergency. But that doesn't mean that we can't do our work. We are still going to work. Hafiz, you and I, we're still going to work. Many viewers of this show is still going to work. So it seems like the political shenanigans that is currently happening may not necessarily impact every single Malaysians out there. Prior to doing this interview, I literally just got off the phone with my mom. She lives in Perlis now. She's like, yeah, it's fine, she's trying to get on Foodpanda to become a merchant there. She's bored. She wants to sell nasi lemak on Foodpanda. And I'm like, hey, so what's happening in Perlis when it comes to, the lawmakers there? And she's like, what? I don't know. I don't care. This is how it is. So, so you don't have to be so concerned about the political situation when it comes to the regular Malaysian.
But of course, you're right in that sense. However, I'm coming from the angles that when we look at the whole political situation here, we're probably looking at a situation where Bersatu and UMNO are probably not friends, but still in the same government. Wouldn't it affect the stability of the government, and wouldn't it in turn would in fact investors' confidence?
Okay, let's talk about the Prabha Ganesan's piece in the Malay Mail very recently, the article that you shared with me.
Yes, yeah.
Prabha is a long-time friend. We've known each other since we were undergrads. He was in UKM, I was in UIA. And he's been an active debater since then, and he likes to argue things in a very strategical manner, right?
Yes.
And in that article, he was talking about the possibility of UMNO contesting seats where Bersatu is contesting. And he even isolated a few cases. For instance, the Pagoh constituency, where Tan Sri Muhyiddin is the incumbent there. Ampang, where Datuk Sri Azmin is the incumbent there. Sorry, I take that back. Zuraida.
Datuk Zuraida.
Yeah, and then Gombak. And then, of course, a few other places, in Perlis. Perak. It's like an interesting dream, right? To see these kind of matches being put up where, for instance, if Muhyiddin is being contested against an UMNO situation and all that. But, tit for tat, if you're in Bersatu and I'm in UMNO, and then if I contest in your place, you will easily say, all right, I'm the president of Bersatu, you contest in my place, I'm going to put a very winnable candidate in your place, which is in somewhere, in Bagan Datuk, for instance, against Zaid Hamidi. When that happens, this kind of
An eye for an eye.
An eye for an eye. I think politicians will go for the risk-averse strategy, which is, okay, you don't put anybody in my place, I will do the same for you. I can't say the rest for everybody, because there are still 222 parliamentary seats out there to be contested in. But if I don't contest in your area, and you don't, therefore you shouldn't contest in my area. I think that relationship might still happen, even when UMNO has stated officially that they are no longer cooperating with Bersatu in the upcoming general elections.
All right, Ibrahim. I guess the issue of the political scene in Malaysia is an ongoing one. Do stay tuned to Astro AWANI for the continuous developments on the politics of the country. We're going to take a short break. Coming up, we're going to discuss a bit about the International Women's Day, which is also happening next week, and of course, the ongoing vaccination process. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Week Ahead. I am Hafiz Marzuki, broadcasting from Astro AWANI studio, and my colleague Ibrahim Sani, broadcasting from home. Before the break, we talked about politics. Moving on, for The Week Ahead, we do not want to touch politics. I want to touch on specifically what's happening on March 8th. As we all know, is the International Women's Day. Of course, it's kind of odd for two males or two guys to be speaking about International Women's Day, Ibrahim, but I feel that this day is very important for us to progress as a country. What do you think? What do you think about the theme for this year? Hashtag Choose to Challenge.
I think choose to challenge is important. We have to challenge the status quo, including two men talking about Women's Day. So we choose to challenge the fact that we men should talk about International Women's Day. But we have to draw some facts when it comes to the women participation in the workforce. There is this particular article by Grant Thornton. They argue that the number of women holding senior leadership positions in Malaysia has hit 37%, and this is the highest recorded despite the pandemic affecting economies around the world. This is coming from Grant Thornton's annual Women in Business report. The ASEAN region has also performed positively. They say that they have improved from 35% to 38%. And the National Tax Practice Leader at Grant Thornton Malaysia, Siah Siu Yun, says that the proportion of women leaders in Malaysia has rise from 31% last year to 37% this year is encouraging. Now, if you think about some sectors as well, Hafiz, when it comes to tech, MDAC is currently being headed by a woman, Surina. Magic is being also run by Zulera. There's a few other sectors, including healthcare, which is also important to talk about. Wan Nadia, perhaps, is a good indicator of what things are happening there in that particular sector. The world of pharmacy as well. There's a world of accountancy. So there's a lot of issues when it comes to women taking over the leadership of all these kind of workplaces. One thing, however, that lags behind is clearly politics. And I'm so sorry to do a roundabout argument and go back to what we were talking about before the break, which is politics. But politics still see a level of low participation in women. One particular clubhouse event that was very interesting to speak of last week was Kari Jamaluddin, Rafizi Ramli and Nurul Izzah being put together in a room and being moderated by James Chai, a former colleague of ours back in BFM. Mel and Sharaj and myself and James were together at BFM a long time ago. KJ was jokingly saying that Nurul Izzah's inevitability. Yeah, there you go. That word. To become Malaysia's first female prime minister is a stark reminder, right, that we have a lot of talent when it comes to women leadership in politics. It's just that perhaps now is not the time for them to shine because of the legacy politicians that are still dominating the news headlines of today.
Yes. Ibrahim, when you touch upon, I mean, it's very encouraging to hear that more than 30% of women are already in decision-making positions according to the survey. But of course, I have no choice but to pull one of the famous quotes from the Iron Lady herself, Tan Sri Rafida Aziz, who said every time when I interviewed her and asked her about this quota, she will always retort that I don't want to hear about quota. What is important is actually your ability, and your leadership ability is more important. Whether you're a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. So, I mean, how do we reconcile this, Ibrahim? Because of course...
We reconcile, no, it's easy. We reconcile it with the choice of a person. And that person doesn't have to be a man, woman, or neither. It's about the ability for the person to decide to do something with his or her life and to not be condemned for it. If a lady chooses to become a homemaker, then that person's choice to become a homemaker has to be respected. For the longest of time, my wife wants to be a homemaker, but because of us living in KL and the situation that we're in, we have 3 kids all growing up and all that, so it's better for us to be a dual income earner, then so be it. That's how it is, right? The issue is when we realize that everybody has to work or else we won't get that participation level. I think that's something of a problem, right? Because then we are imposing some sort of a strange philosophy or belief for others to conform to what we think is correct. So because of that, that's why, I mean, you're not alone. Because when we asked Rafida Aziz back when she was still a minister, right, in BFM, she too was arguing very vehemently against either soft quota or even hard quota, right?
Yes.
And the issue here is, for instance, in this government, all right, we have a few women ministers, Rina Harun, Zuraida, and are they, representing women per se? Or are they just representing their own brand or their own portfolios of leading their own ministries? We can't just select a person that is, iconic, say for instance Aung San Suu Kyi, and then we realize that she's not up to it when it comes to defending the freedom of Myanmar. So, people can disappoint, and if you put pedestal on a woman leader and then that person fails to succeed, I think that's when we realize that quota is never a good way to move forward. It's always the ability of the individual.
Okay, talking about that, I have to bring up, of course, women leaders and of course pandemic management, because we're still in a pandemic, right? And recently, I don't know if you come across there's this survey that said that among about more than 100 countries assessed in their pandemic response, New Zealand tops. I'm sure you're not surprised about that. And of course, number 3 is Taiwan, and both these countries are actually headed by women. New Zealand, of course, by Jacinda Ardern. And in Taiwan, the president is Tsai Ing-wen. What do you think, Ibrahim? Are women just better at handling crisis, or what do you think about that?
I don't know, man. I think there are capable men leaders that are able to handle crisis as well. I just think that sometimes competence doesn't need to be gender biased. But when we look at some of the developments that are currently happening around the world, there is a causation, maybe not correlation, in terms of whether or not women tend to be better leaders than men. But for now, it's worth noting that, Taiwan and New Zealand really tops the mark on that one.
Yes, I guess we'll keep an eye on that. And moving on from International Women's Day, of course, we're going to talk about the week ahead is, of course, the vaccine registration process. And this past week, we have, in fact, crossed over the 100,000 people vaccinated. Of course, the rate is not what is expected to be. But I think the more important thing here, Ibrahim, is, of course, the registration process, which I'm sure have elicited a lot of response. People are talking about screens are not showing that they are registered, or like maybe in fact you and I encountered similar problems. In fact, we've registered on the first day, and yet we've got a new screen saying that we've registered on another day. But I believe you have tweeted YB Khairi about it, and there is a response, right?
There is a response. YB Khairi says that rest assured that whoever that has registered prior to the latest update by MySejahtera app will already have been taken into account. But it also put a great stress on the back-end efforts of the database of MySejahtera. But this is another issue when it comes to the MySejahtera app per se. Do we have sufficient information and data about how the database is being managed? Is there a security element to it? And who has hold of the data other than the Ministry of Health? So there's a lot of issues when it comes to data management and the security issues surrounding it. There's also the level of participation when it comes to Malaysians registering on MySejahtera app. My mother, as I mentioned earlier, has not registered on MySejahtera app, and I was asking her why. She has a smartphone, she knows how to use a phone, she's like, she just doesn't trust it, and when she does get on the app, to her, it's not user-friendly, and she just gives up and she gets out. And I don't, blame her. She's still a user, right? When you give a product to a customer and the customer doesn't want to use it, you don't blame the customer. You got to think about how to make the product a little bit more user-friendly than that. And people like you and me, we don't mind the problems that come around with the MySejahtera app. But at the same time, if it's not user-friendly, it's very difficult for you to create a mass sign-up for people to be on the vaccine program. Okay. But on the other hand, and this is the big problem here, the app failed for a few hours last week during a vaccination program day, meaning that from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, that's when most of the vaccinations happen. There was a nationwide MySejahtera app blackout. The impact is that people can't be vaccinated. So you have patients at the clinic kesihatan, and you have the vaccines ready, and you have the medical professionals ready to administer the vaccines to these individuals, but nothing can be done because the MySejahtera app was down. And if the MySejahtera app is down, the patient or the medical professional or whatever, they can't register that individual, so they were all asked to turn back and go home, at least for that particular moment in time. And that is
a wasted day, right, Ibrahim?
It was a wasted day. It was a wasted day. And then, of course, there's a knock-on effect. If Hafiz, you're supposed to be vaccinated today, I'm supposed to be vaccinated tomorrow, but you couldn't do it today and you come tomorrow, then when am I going to be vaccinated? I'm going to be vaccinated the day after. So that knock-on effect is going to be compounded. But so the pressure on MySejahtera people to be up and running in terms of getting the app beautifully worked out is going to be crucial because the impact is high. The risk is also high and the impact is high. And because of that, there's a lot of stress, not just on the normal stuff of when you think about vaccination, i.e. the procurement of the vaccines, the approval from NPRA, the messaging that needs to go out from the communications people, either JKJAV or JCOM or whatever alphabets that you have. It's also that app to make sure that the app is ready. So I think it's going to be a daunting task for them to get 27 point something million people vaccinated by December. Having said that, I don't think it's going to be an impossibility, because even after first week and even after all these problems, KJ has already tweeted out that over 100,000 people have been vaccinated. So if the first week is taken as a barometer, meaning that 100,000 people vaccinated in a week times 52 weeks, maknanya apa? This time, next year, the absolute worst case scenario is that 5.2 million people is going to be vaccinated. And I think that's not bad at all.
All right. But that's still like what, 25% of the whole target?
Yes, but getting 25% vaccinated
is the worst than zero.
is better than zero. Right? I'm talking about worst case scenario.
Yes,
and
correct.
just like all things, things do get better over time, and things do get more efficient and get faster over time. Just like how you were riding your bicycle when you were young versus how you are today, just like how you would do a particular work that you're supposed to do today versus what you started off doing it. I think people are going to get better over time, and therefore it shouldn't be that hard.
Yeah, let's just hope it ramps up over time. Next week, I'm sure we'll still be touching on it. Let's hope the numbers improve more by then. I believe that's all the time we have for this edition of The Week Ahead. Thank you, Ibrahim. We'll see you around next week. I'm Hafiz Mazuki.
And I am Ibrahim Sani. This is it for The Week Ahead.